Oh, good news. The Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, is suspending its planned strike after reaching an agreement with the federal government. The suspension of the planned strike is coming weeks after NUPENG issued a 2-week ultimatum to the federal government over issues including non-payment of workers' salaries and title benefits. According to the union, an agreement was reached on some of the issues that instigated the planned strike. NUPENG says it will ensure that petroleum products are available nationwide during the Yuletide period. A civil society organization, Access to Justice, is calling on the National Judicial Council to adopt new procedures to ensure greater objectivity, transparency, and fairness in appointing judges. Project Director, Access to Justice, Deji Ajare, says judicial service commissions continue to flout the 2014 guidelines for judicial appointment and that the NJC allows these infractions to go on. He said that Access to Justice has identified some gaps that must be blocked in selecting candidates for judicial office.
The guidelines of 2014 adopted by the National Judicial Council, headed by the Chief Justice of the Federation of Nigeria, is another cup of tea. The judicial service commissions of the various states, headed by the chief judges and other judicial authorities, have consistently flouted the 2014 guidelines by failing to observe the procedures that promote accessibility, fairness, merit, and the transparency of the process, as well as offering a level playing field for all qualified persons. And the NJC has been condoning these violations by the judicial service commissions. The result is that the process for selecting judges and justices of Nigeria is still opaque, it is unfair, lacking in rigor, and it compromises merit.
Well, for more on this, I have Deji Ajare, who is the Project Director of Access to Justice. Deji, glad to have you join us.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Good. Let's start by asking whether the purpose of the 2014 guidelines to promote better transparency in the appointment system and the rest have been achieved or are being achieved, but that it's not being quite what you expected or what Access to Justice expected.
Okay. Now, it's important for us to understand what the position was before the 2014 guidelines were adopted by the NJC. And before 2014, it was basically a nomination system that we had for the appointment of judicial officers. It was based on nominations from maybe senior judicial officers or retired judicial officers, and it was in consideration of the fact that this was not a fair, this was not an open system that the guidelines apparently were adopted. Now, the guidelines stipulates the process, the procedure for appointments from the moment there are vacancies, the announcement of the vacancies on the websites of the judicial committees of the various states and the national judicial and the judicial committees and the judicial commissions of the federation. Now, if this is done, then it of course allows people, legal practitioners, both those who are at the bench and those who are at the bar, those who are in the academia, to apply.
In one phase, qualified persons.
Qualified persons. And this process, it stipulates in very clear terms, in very detailed terms, the specific processes that should be followed. The whole idea behind this clearly is to ensure that you expand the net of those who are able to access judicial offices, so that at the end of the day, we are able to put our best foot forward. We are able to encourage those who, all of those people who are interested in becoming judicial officers and who have the capacity. But before 2014, what you had was simply just, who you know, it was who you know. And one would have expected that after the adoption of the guidelines, the NJC would ensure strict compliance.
Because you're saying that the NJC is also encouraging this violation.
Oh yes, it condones the violations by the judicial committees and commission. Now, because they do not follow those guidelines strictly, and at the end of the day, the position we had before 2014 is what basically still happens. And when you look at the appointments since in 2015, we, for instance, in our report, in the report that was presented today, we cited 3 critical examples. Appointment of judges of the Federal High Court in 2015, appointment of justices of the Supreme Court in 2019, appointment of judges at the State High Court in Lagos in 2017. All of these
had infractions,
had clear infractions. We sent requests to the of course the respective judicial commissions to give us information on how they complied, and their responses were either no responses or very, very vague responses as to how they complied.
Okay, now because of time, we've established the fact that JSC has flouted these guidelines.
Absolutely.
The next thing, and that the NJC has encouraged them according to access to justice. Yes. So what is the way out, both at the NJC, the JSC levels, for these reforms to take hold and transform the judiciary?
Okay. Now, naturally, the heads of the judicial committees and commission naturally would want to take advantage of the loopholes in that system and, of course, appoint persons that they favor. It is the responsibility of the NJC to ensure and enforce strict compliance to these guidelines. If the NJC does not do that, if it does not reject nominations that have not complied strictly with these guidelines, if it does not start doing so, the judicial committees and commission are not likely to comply with the guidelines. It is only when they take steps to do so that you are going to see that level of compliance.
NJC watches over JSC as it seems. So who is watching over NJC to be able to follow the guidelines so that the judicial committees you talked about can then go in line? I mean, follow the line.
I will tell you, unfortunately, nobody. And let me even tell you what is even more ridiculous is that the NJC is headed by the Chief Justice of the Federation, who himself is the head of the Judicial Service Commission.
Oh, so the same person is on the NJC and the
JSC. He has the NJC, he has the JSC. So these are some of the loopholes that we talk about in the guidelines, because the guidelines themselves need review. One, you can see the kind of ridiculous situation that this situation, the NJC head of the NJC and the head of the JSC puts us into. It is important that things like that are checked. Again, even the powers it gives to the heads of the judicial commissions and the judicial commission and council committees of the states, you will find it simply says, oh, from the shortlisted candidates, they will nominate candidates on merit, based on merit, without defining in clear terms what those conditions that would qualify as merit would be. At the end of the day, the definition of merit is still left to the whims of those who head the Judicial Service Commission or the Judicial Council. So these are some of the loopholes that still need to be plugged in the
I guess people will keep on pushing until you fill in those gaps. Thank you so much, Deji Ajare, who is the Project Director of Access to Justice, for being in the studio.
Thank you so much for that.